So hello, this is Paul Kellaway, the Wildlife Preparedness and Response Manager at Oil Spill Response, and welcome to the second in a series of interviews with wildlife response organisations that have been participating in the Global Oiled Wildlife Response System project. The intention is now to transition the project to a Global Oiled Wildlife Response service, so a guaranteed 4-person wildlife assessment team that will be available as a supplementary service through OSRL. And to raise awareness of the amazing organisations that have been collaborating on this, I'm hosting monthly conversations with each of the network partners. This month, I'm joined by Chris Battaglia from Focus Wildlife in the US and Canada. Chris is co-founder and president of Focus Wildlife and has been actively involved in oiled wildlife response since 1988. Beginning with the Exxon Valdez in '89, Chris has participated in wildlife response portions of spills over 90 times nationally and internationally. Chris, it's great to see you. And yeah, thanks so much for chatting with me today.
Great to see you too, Paul. Thanks for having me.
So yeah, let's jump in. So I guess the first question I had was just to ask you to introduce Focus Wildlife. So just to say a bit about the organization, the mission, and where and how do you carry out your work?
Yeah, so Focus Wildlife International, we have two companies. There's Focus Wildlife International and there's Focus Wildlife Canada. And the idea is we're providing wildlife response and preparedness services to government, industry, and NGOs. I think just to kind of elaborate on that too, we founded Focus Wildlife. I founded Focus Wildlife with my wife, Lana. That was a while back as well. And actually, she had the original idea was to bring professional wildlife response back to the Pacific Northwest. She grew up in Vancouver and was the wildlife director in a small rehab facility on Vancouver Island, and always kind of felt like there was a need because there always kind of got oil birds and there was no mechanism or system to deal with these birds, obviously. And so she came down to California to get the expertise from International Rescue there. And that's how it all got started. And then eventually we ended up here in Washington. I think, basically providing that service to professional wildlife response. I think probably elaborating on that, what that means is before it was all NGOs. So if there's a spill, industry's looking around, who can take this oil bird and basically dump it without anything somewhere, wherever who is closest, right? And most of these organizations have no clue how to deal with that from a safety perspective, for one, and just also the expertise of protocols and how to actually manage oil birds. And I think it was important also for us, for the industry, to kind of professionally to see that there's, we wanted to make sure they understand actually their needs. I think this always has been sort of the, I wouldn't say, I don't know, our image per se, right? It's all about, before it's all about just washing birds. And we wanted to get beyond that. We wanted to show industry in a sense that there's more to it than just, okay, we get an old bird, wait until we get that. And then we start, kind of rehab the bird and that's it. There's a whole lot more to that. And I think for that, industry also got more comfortable with us as well, or with that approach, because they, we adjust, to our clients what they need. And we've started with, doing an assessment. I think that was very important too, that we have sort of almost like a stopgap. Okay, we go out, we look, we come back, we tell them, okay, this is what we see. This is what we should be doing. Maybe there are no birds, maybe there are 50 birds, 10 birds. So that was a very important aspect of it, that they kind of, having a process in place that they could understand and wrap their heads around it. And then obviously, yes, not just there is planning, emergency planning, there's training. So there's a whole lot that goes into that.
Yeah, it's a good point that people often think of wildlife response, they think of one specific aspect, but we're talking about a much broader range of activities that are integrated into oil spill response. So, I mean, is there a story of perhaps a response that you've been involved in that gives a kind of an idea, I guess, of the way Focus works and what that wider sense of wildlife response looks like?
Yeah, I think, I could just look right now, right? We're engaged in a response. There's a ship that went down in the 60s, and started leaking oil. It's like a 400 some 20-foot oil or pulp carrier. And interesting enough, everything, if people hear oil to wildlife response, all they can think of is like the big tanker spills, right? And I think, as Valeria pointed out in her interview as well, right, is her, they do, say, inland work, their pipelines, their refineries and all that good stuff. It's not necessarily just a big tanker spill. And that's the same thing, right? So there's oil coming up, and the service that we provide for them right now is, we do planning, we do emergency planning for them. There are no oil birds per se at this. The big part of this is deterrence. I think that's sort of, making sure that actually, if anything happens, birds don't get into the oil. We're collaborating or working for the Canadian Coast Guard, which is not industry in a sense, right? So yeah, I think it's just the whole aspect of it. It's not just, the little tiny thing of, okay, we watch birds, this is like a whole bunch of other things. I'm on the water, say we've been there now for almost 5 months, right? Providing we're up in the boat and by the wreck, we're doing assessment, we're looking at birds, how much in the area. But at the same time, back home, there's, 2 people who write the wildlife plans for that. So what happens if, right? Preparing for in case something happens. So I think that kind of encompasses the work, right? It's not just that. And plus also because of what we, the team members or the people that are on site too as well, we give, we have the expertise to, for example, to give booming strategies. What's better to do? How can we make sure that actually oil does not impact the wildlife? It's not just about collecting, we also want to protect, right, as well. So we have that expertise too. So it's far more than we just, when you start and just, watch the birds, so to speak.
Yeah, so it's really informing some of those broader strategies so that those wildlife considerations are right at the heart of that as well.
No, you have to, I think, just not, the client in a sense understands, right? I think it always kind of starts of, okay, yeah, we have, there's wildlife. I mean, it has been obviously gotten better and better over the years, when we first started, but that it's at the forefront. And also it's hard for people to, or for clients sometimes to understand when wildlife is impacted, it's on the forefront. It's there, right? Is immediately you have, if you look at all the spills, what's on the front page of the newspaper, you get your oil bird. It's fairly or not, right? That's what's there, and to make them understand that wildlife is such an important part of it. And I think, all things considered, it's for industry. If you look past, the name of who your client is, down below, you're dealing with people who care about wildlife too. It's not like that they don't. They do. Everybody does, right? At the end of the day. And so kind of finding that and tapping into this and making sure, that at the end of the day, right, that wildlife response gets their just billing, so to speak.
Yeah, that's really great. I mean, you're obviously talking about that professionalization of it over time, that it's become more and more recognized and integrated. And, I suppose, with that in mind, and just in terms of international collaboration, Focus has been one of the project partners in the multi-year Global Old Wildlife Response System project. And, a lot of that has been about how to better integrate wildlife, not just in one country, but internationally. So, yeah, I mean, what would you say is one or some of the most significant achievements of that initiative of actually, getting these leading organizations together and really looking at international response?
Well, I think first and foremost, I have to say, right, I think if we talk about GOWRS in particular, in general, but I think also kind of go back and look how it started. I think for, the people that are involved, there's a lot, same thing with us, right? When it first started out, there's a lot of tenacity there. I think I'm looking at, remember, Hugo coming to visit us here in Washington, to talk about, the concept of GOWRS and Sea Alarm and Saskia and all that, right? And then obviously, and Rob Holland as well, right? Just to having actually people there that actually could push this project forward. Without that, nothing will happen. I think it's, I mean, we talked about this before, this is certain individuals that have to be in place for this to happen, and also to having that bridge, like for example, Rob, right, the bridge from the say the organizations, the wildlife organizations, to industry, and he definitely provided that. I think without that we wouldn't be anywhere near where we're at here now. And I think it provided, yes, I mean, from the very get-go, kind of figuring out who actually should be part of it. Now we have the 10 organizations that there. I think it provided us with, an opportunity to collaborate, come up with, as Valeria pointed out, right, the protocols, which are huge, right? That sort of the standards, the standardization of, say, wildlife response. And I think in that in itself, right, eventually, you have, that people actually pull into the same direction, I think, and also that industry sees that being, professional, and we have something to offer, and hopefully we can continue. But like I said, I think a huge thanks has to go to, like I said at the very beginning, to Hugo, Sea Alarm, and obviously OSRL as well.
So yeah, I mean, you're talking about next steps and sort of next frontiers, and I think that we're at this place now where we're hoping to transition from this project phase into GOWRS actually being a funded live service or an operational service. So I think that speaks to that integration that you're talking about. So yeah, it's a question I think with two parts. I think the first part is, why do you think that's so important for wildlife response preparedness specifically?
I think it's hugely important. I think that's where the rubber hits the road, so to speak, right? I think it's it means contingency in the sense that we actually can go on. I think we're at the point extremely thankful for how we got here, but now we're at the point where we have to grow, and unfortunately or fortunately, there has to be funding for that. I mean, yes, as an organization, there are 4 people that built the assessment team. This is not just something that somebody, maybe in the good old days, there's some volunteers that you bring in. We say we're professional, but being professional, that means you have to bring qualifications to the table. And we all know this is not just some ad in the newspaper say we need GOWRS needs assessment team personnel. There's a lot of experience that goes into it. So I think that's the one step, and you can't do that without even retaining personnel. And I think more importantly, it's also for me, okay, not that we're dating ourselves here now, right? But it's like you look over your shoulder, and it's, yes, I mean, we're very committed to what we do, and we want to do this for a long time. But there has to be some, people have to follow in our footsteps, right? And you can't do that by, okay, what do you offer? Yes, we would really like you to get involved in this work, but there's nothing there. There's no funding mechanism, and maybe you find somebody that will do this out of the goodness of their heart. But if we want to be professional, that has to be the foremost and the foremost on our minds. How are we going to bring people in? Once we step away. I see it in Washington for us as well as an organization. If you look back, right, all of us have sort of started at the same time. We talked about Treasure. It was like, what, 2 years ago? No. But, it's like, yeah. So, then you look, and then, that whole mechanism of bringing people in during these big spills, Erica, Prestige, if you look, everybody's like Valeria, myself, you, right? We all started, and it was like 10, 15, 20 years ago. And then there's a void. And I think GOWRS can provide that too, if we have the appropriate funding. Otherwise industry will lose us. Eventually, we can't, show up to spills with our walkers, right? We have to have a bit fresh blood in there. So anyways.
Yeah, no, it's such an important point. And as you say, it's like, the good practice is defined, but you need that continuity of knowledge. You need those people who've built up that experience and can really pass that on to that next generation, as you say. So I guess with that in mind, I mean, the second part of that question is then, I mean, what would getting this service funded and transition to a service, I mean, what would that mean for your organization, for Focus Wildlife?
Much the same as I already said, right? I think it's the continuance in terms of, bringing in personnel as well, or more personnel, or retaining personnel as well, or having, retaining or being able to recruit people that have the potential. They might not have the experience that we sort of bring to the table of, can talk about, our little war stories from Treasure and Eric and all that, but at least have the potential of bringing know-how in that we can adapt to our purposes, right? And I was talking about, keeping booming strategy advice or all that, right? To be able to recruit, and that's for me is important. As a small organization, I can't do that without, sort of volunteerism goes only a certain way. And nowadays, it's not just, we can't even, there's liability insurance, there is vaccination, there is international travel and all that. This stuff doesn't work anymore by just kind of calling up somebody that, oh yeah, a good friend of mine who's really good at this, and maybe we can, it has to be professional. And I think that the funding at least provides the structure, the possibility to do that, and being able to maybe continue this work for a long time, right?
Yeah, that's very well said. And you say it really does have a huge impact. So we'll keep working on that going forward.
Yeah.
So finally, I think this is just the last question to end on. We're doing this as a monthly series. So our next organization up in the series will be International Bird Rescue, another partner in the GOWRS project. So just to end, can you say something that you particularly admire about International Bird Rescue?
Oh, absolutely. Well, first, can I go back and thank Valeria for her kind words, what she said about us. So
yes,
I want to say thanks, Valeria, for that. Obviously, Valeria and I, or us, or like all of us, right, have worked together for a long time. And like she's pointed out, sort of the collaborative effort, I think that's sort of important with her as well, right? I remember last time we worked together was the Swans of Rotterdam, and I know you and I had the conversation, to bring in terms of who be best fitted, and she was sort of the first one that actually that came to mind because of her dedication and obviously the professional know-how that she brings to the table. So, anyways, so thanks, Valeria. But anyways, so Bird Rescue, obviously, it's an organization, right? We all sort of cut our teeth with them, and it gave us the start, and they have to have been around for, well, it was the first one ever, right? And I think they put World Wildlife Response on the map. I think it's also their sort of tenacity to push things. I mean, especially in California, where with the inception or after Exxon Valdez, using the momentum, I think that's important to establish certain things. I think OWCN sort of all this obviously plays together, but I think that's my biggest thing in terms of when I think of them, right? What they've done for the old wildlife response community per se, in general. For going back to Alice, I just thought about like all of us have come a long way, but them particular, like if you look about, when I first started out there, the little building in Berkeley, and then, moving up to Cordelia and all that. So they've come a long way. So.
Yeah, great. Well, it's well said, and I look forward to speaking with them next month.
Absolutely.
Chris, thank you so much. Anything else, just to wrap up, final thoughts or reflections?
How much time do you have? No, it's okay. Thanks for the opportunity again, right? And again, I think since this is all GOWRS, or you talk about GOWRS and all that, I think, again, very thankful for the people who have started this, and obviously, OSRL in particular, and CLARM as well, and you and Hugo and all these, and Rob, for basically getting us where we're at. I've always said, right, there are individuals that, that there's the idea, but then also it needs the certain individuals or the right individuals to do that. And I think we have that in place. And I'm excited that you are at OSRL now as well. And hopefully we can continue this, the good work, eh? Thanks.
Yeah, thanks so much, Chris. Yeah, appreciate you being with us, and wish you all the best with wrapping up that response in BC as well. And see you again soon.
See you again soon. Bye, Paul.
Bye.
Take care.